Hello, everyone. Good to see all of you guys. Hi. I'm so excited for this webinar. If you haven't yet, open up your chat. Go ahead and let me know where you are tuning in from. I was looking a little bit at the chat as I was watching the video. And let's see, we have people from Alaska, Canada, Maryland. I know there were some people from Europe, which is super cool. Illinois, Colorado, Japan. It's so amazing the international audience that we have and how we have people just from all over the world that come and that tune in to these webinars. So thank you guys all for being here with me today on this beautiful Sunday. I am really looking forward to it. Let's see, Scotland, Montana, Michigan, Florida. Good. I'm so happy to see all of you guys. I hope that you have a pen and paper so you can take some notes. We have a lot to cover, and I just cannot wait to share with you guys everything that I know about flying changes. Kentucky, New York, Wyoming. Awesome. Is the audio working? I think it's working. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, awesome. Good. All right, it's officially 12 o'clock. We are dressage people, so we start right on time. I have a lot to cover today, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about flying changes. Flying changes are a very magical movement. Like when you get a flying change and your horse leaps in the air and they move all 4 feet in midair to change from one lead to the other, it's an amazing moment of harmony and connection with your horse. When you feel a flying change, it gives you the chills to have that feeling and that connection with your horse. That said, teaching the flying changes can be really hard. Teaching the changes can be extremely frustrating. It can be a little bit scary at times because your horse kind of will go through some airs above ground, some excitement as you're learning, as your horse is learning the flying changes. And sometimes trying to teach the changes can feel unattainable. Unfortunately, a lot of horses and a lot of riders get stuck teaching the flying changes. So today I'm going to give you guys some tips and some strategies to help you with your flying changes. A couple of things, a couple of just office things to know is that I have my team here in the chat. So if you guys have questions as we go through the presentation, pop them in the chat. Also, you can email us. It's support@Amelia Newcomb Dressage if you have other questions, because I'm sure we won't be able to get to everyone's questions during the presentation. I would also love it if you guys can screenshot your favorite slide from today's presentation and share it either on Instagram. I'm @Amelia Newcomb Dressage. Please tag me, or on our Facebook group, Amelia's Dressage Club. That really helps me out to spread the word, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to start out by telling you guys a story about my horse, Kensington. If you watch me at all, you've probably seen Kensington before. He's up there. That's Kensington there. So Kensington is a horse. I got him when he was 5. He has this big, beautiful canter that is pretty hard to manage. It's very big, it's unbalanced. I knew when I got him as a 5-year-old that it was going to be hard to teach him the changes. And to be honest, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to collect his canter and teach him how to do pirouettes or flying changes. When Kensington was a 6-year-old, I really wanted to do the 6-year-old classes with him. But the 6-year-old classes have flying changes in them. And teaching the flying changes was really almost impossible with Kensington. I remember there was one lesson where I was working with my coach, Yo Hinneman, and we were just trying like flying changes, trying to get Kensington to understand what we wanted him to do with his legs. It was really frustrating. Kensington was frustrated and confused. I was frustrated. Even Yo Hinneman, I think, was like not really sure what to do. And a horse like Kensington, a lot of people would have given up or gotten stuck and never been able to teach him the changes. So after this lesson, Yo and I had a little chat and we were like, okay, we have to just really go back to the basics, get the canter more organized, more in balance, more under himself, and then go back to working on the flying changes. And it did work. Kensington did learn his flying changes, but it was definitely one of those things that it was darkest before the dawn. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I don't know if Kensington is ever going to learn the flying changes. They were so hard to teach him. So today's webinar, I'm going to give you guys some tips and some exercises, and we're going to really look at the mechanics of a flying change. Sound good? Yes, thumbs up. Good. Okay, let me pull up my slides and we'll get started with the presentation. Again, if you have questions as we go through things, be sure to ask them in the chat and we will do our best to get to them. Okay, so flying changes. In today's webinar, we are going to cover what is a flying change? What are the aids for a flying change? Are you ready to start working on your flying changes? How do you improve your changes? And then where can you learn more about the flying changes? So if you're taking notes today, which I hope you are, that's a little outline of what we're going to cover in today's webinar. Okay, go ahead and let me know in the chat, where are you on your flying changes journey? So A, I've never ridden a flying change before. B, I'm trying to teach my horse flying changes. C, my horse knows the changes, but I don't. D, I can do changes, but they're not very good. Or E, I just love everything about horses and learning. Okay, I see some A's, some B's, some C's. We have a range. Good. Awesome. Well, regardless of what your answer was, there's something in today's presentation today for you. And I'm really grateful that you're spending this time with me on a beautiful Sunday. If you are new here, I'm Amelia. These are my two beautiful horses, Kensington and Harvey. I love riding. I love training all horses, and I also really love sharing my knowledge with you guys. As I was preparing for this webinar, I did a little research. So I've competed over 50 different horses in dressage. I've done over 600 dressage tests, which is kind of crazy to think about. Pretty much since I was 15, I've been training horses. I would say I ride about 8 horses on average per day. When you add that all up, it's about 50,000 hours in the saddle. So I have a lot of experience, good and bad, to help you guys with your horses and to help you with your flying changes. Let's start out with, what is a flying change? This is the definition of a flying change from USEF. The flying change is performed in one stride with the front and the hind legs changing at the same moment. The change of the leading front and hind legs takes place during the moment of suspension. The aid should be precise and unobtrusive. So that's a very clear definition, which I love. It's really important to note that the definition of a flying change is that the front and the hind legs have to change at the same time, which is why if your horse is late behind and they change one stride after with the hind leg, you're not going to get a very good score in dressage. Okay, go ahead and let me know in the chat. Give me some words that you would use to describe flying changes. When you think about it, flying changes are magical. There's a photo there, that's Lottie Fry and Glamourdale. That horse just looks like he's flying. Okay, fun, intimidating, effortless, out of reach, okay. Intimidating, difficult, Okay, so we have a range of things: scary, frustrating. Yes, there's a big range of emotions that goes along with the flying changes for sure, and that is totally normal. Next question: can your horse do a flying change? Let me know in the chat, what breed is your horse? This here is a photo of Sparky. Sparky is a horse that I got in training. He came from a rescue kill pin in Texas. He was an Appaloosa that had a lot of personality, and Sparky came to me because he kept dumping his rider. And when I first got Sparky, he was really good at inverting, putting his head up, and trying to buck. The amazing thing about Sparky is that he was very smart and very talented. I showed Sparky all the way through the I-1, and in the end, I was actually able to teach Sparky his 1 tempi changes, which was fantastic. Here's a quote from Kira Kirkland. She says, "A flying change of lead at the canter is just a horse's natural way to rebalance himself. Even foals do them in the field. The trick is really just to get the horse to do the change when we want." And that's really important to remember. Horses do flying changes all the time on their own. The hard part is that you need to be able to get your horse to do a flying change when you ask for it, and to stay relaxed and submissive and round and on the aids and all of those things. Let's start by looking at the canter rhythm. So as you all know, there's a left lead canter and there's a right lead canter. The canter is a 3-beat gait. So beat 1 down here on the bottom is the outside hind leg on the ground. This is what we call the upbeat of the canter because the horse's front end is up off of the ground. Beat 2 is the inside hind leg and the outside front leg. This is the level beat of the canter. Beat 3 is the downbeat of the canter when the inside front leg hits the ground. And then after the downbeat of the canter, the horse jumps up in the air and there is a moment of suspension. The flying change happens during this moment of suspension. So it's really important that you understand the mechanics of the canter. Riding the canter is kind of like a wave. So you can see in beat 1, my horse is going up. In beat 2, my horse is more level. In beat 3, it's down. So that's why the canter feels like a wave, is because of this rhythm. Let's talk about what are the aids for a flying change. Just think about that for a minute. What are the aids for a flying change? Very simply put, the aid for a flying change is the exact same aid as you give for the canter. So let's just think about this for a minute. If you are, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you guys all a little better. So if you're in left lead canter, what's your body doing? You have your left leg at the girth, your right leg is behind the girth, you're sitting a little bit more on your left seat bone. So you're in left lead canter. Now let's imagine that you're going to make a transition to the trot. So for the trot, your outside leg is going to come forward. You're going to be sitting straight. Now, how are you going to set your horse up for the right lead canter? For the right lead canter, you've got to move your horse off the right leg into the left rein. So you've got to get your horse to bend to the right. Then your left leg, that's your outside leg, goes back for the right lead canter. So a flying change is basically just that you are asking for the other lead, but you're staying in the canter. So if I'm in left lead canter and I'm going to set up for the right flying change, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my legs in position for left lead canter until I want the flying change. That's really, really important. Your leg position determines the lead. So you need to be able to supple your horse to the right. Like you need to be able to bend your horse to the right, and your horse should not change leads until your legs actually change position. That's really, really important for tempi changes and also for your half pass zigzag later on as you move up into the FEI levels. So one thing that is like so silly, but I totally do it, is last night when I was walking with my husband, I was skipping and I was practicing my flying changes while I was skipping around. And it really does work. You've got to visualize left lead canter, supple your horse to the right, then you change your leg position. You should give a little bit on the inside rein when you ask for the canter. So let me pull up here quickly. I hope this is the right video. A quick little video on the flying changes. So this is just slow-mo version of what exactly happens during a flying change. So you can see the clear 3 beats. So the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 of the canter. Now, when he does the flying change, you see how he has to push off of that inside front leg and leap up in the air. So flying changes require a lot of suspension and a lot of jump. The more suspension that your horse has and the more air time they have in the canter, the easier it is going to be for them to do a flying change. When you look at this in slow motion and when you actually think about what is required of your horse to actually do a flying change, it's pretty amazing. You know, they have to push off of the ground and then in midair switch from one lead to the other. So you can see why it's a hard thing to teach your horse, because it requires a lot of coordination and balance, on top of the fact that you want your horse to do it on your aids when you actually ask for it. Okay, let me get back to my slides. Do we have any pressing questions, Nicole?
Not at this time.
Perfect. So let's talk about why are flying changes so hard. So you might be wondering what all these crazy blue arrows are on my horse Harvey. That's showing the flying change signal. So in my brain, I decide, okay, I want to do a flying change. The signal goes from my brain down to my leg. I set my horse up, I change my leg position. When I change my leg position, then Harvey has to feel that. And that signal of my leg position changing goes into Harvey's brain. Inside of Harvey's brain, it bounces around a bit. So the signal goes to the somatosensory cortex and then to the motor cortex. And then the motor cortex goes back down Harvey's spinal column and tells his legs to change. All of this has to happen in that moment of suspension, which is why the more suspension, the more airtime in your canter, the easier it is to do a flying change. When you think about all of these things that have to happen in a very short period of time, it's pretty amazing that you can teach your horse to do flying changes. So let's move on to, are you ready to start working on the flying changes? It's really, really important that you have the basics correct before you start working on the changes. Like I just mentioned, the aid for a flying change is basically the same as the canter aid. So one of the most important prerequisites are trot, canter, trot transitions. You need to have this be very simple and very reliable. You need to always be able to get the correct lead. So change of lead through the trot is a really, really good exercise where you can go from left lead canter, across the diagonal trot, move your horse over, pick up the right lead canter. That has to be super reliable. You also need to be able to do walk canter, walk transitions. Those transitions start to work on getting your horse more collected, more engaged, more active, all of those things. And then simple changes. So simple changes are where you go from canter to walk and then back to the other lead of canter. It's really important before you start working on your flying changes that your horse understands, okay, there's a left lead canter and there's a right lead canter. Often horses will prefer one lead over the other, and you really want to try to get your left lead canter and your right lead canter as similar and as strong and coordinated as possible before you start working on your flying changes. one thing to think about is that whatever problems you have in your canter transition, so a lot of horses come above the bit in their canter transition, or maybe they don't react right when you ask for the canter, or maybe they require a lot of setup, a lot of preparation for the canter transition. Those are all things you really want to work on first before you start asking for the changes. So your trot canter transition and your walk canter transition, it needs to be simple, it needs to be reliable, and your horse needs to be really reactive to a small aid. Because if you have to do a lot just to get your horse to pick up the canter, like if you have to cluck and tap and 3 strides later your horse canters, that's going to be about 1,000 times worse when you ask for a flying change. You can think of flying changes really as a test of your basics. A couple of other things that are important to introduce before the flying changes is counter canter. Counter canter is a test of balance and straightness. I like to teach my horses a little bit of a leg yield at the canter because that's really important to be able to set your horse up for the flying change, as well as being able to adjust your canter a little bit forward and back. So on the right here, this is just showing you what I have inside my course on flying changes. And I go a lot into really helping you guys with the basics and showing you how particular you have to be with all these exercises. So it's not good enough that you can just pick up the canter. Your horse has to stay through, they have to stay supple, they have to stay straight, they have to stay round. The pickier you are about your basics, the easier it's going to be to teach your horse how to do the flying changes. One could argue that simple changes are kind of the #1 secret to flying changes. Let me know in the chat if any of you guys are showing second level this year. In second level, there's about 1 million simple changes. Simple changes are where you go from canter to walk and back to canter without any trot steps. This is really a test of collection, of canter quality, of activity, and also if your horse is really on the aids. So it's very, very important that your simple changes are quite good before you start working on flying changes. And that's why second level is so hard. And that's why they put so many transitions in second level, is because they're trying to get you ready to teach your horse flying changes, which show up in third level.
Amelia, before you jump into this slide, we have 2 questions that I think will go perfectly with this slide coming up. Someone was asking, you talked about getting more airtime. How do we do that? And then someone was asking for the clarification for the prerequisite forward and back. Can you speak a little bit onto those 2 questions?
Yeah, for sure. So airtime, obviously the reason that we want airtime is because that's when the horse does the flying change. And simple changes, so the canter walk canter transitions, honestly are probably the best way to improve your canter quality. That's why we do so many canter walk canter transitions, because what the canter walk canter transitions do is that they rebalance your horse onto the hind end. They get your horse quicker, they get your horse more active, they get your horse more in balance. And all of that improves the canter quality. So like I was talking about Kensington, and I told you my little flying change story with Kensington. Kensington had, in the beginning, his canter was good in the sense that it had clear rhythm, but his canter was really big. It was almost impossible to even do a big 20-meter circle because his stride was so long and flat and kind of strung out. And so what I had to do with Kensington to improve his canter quality and to be able to do the flying changes on him was I literally did 1 million canter walk, canter walk, canter walk transitions. And this also helps to develop more jump and more air time in the canter. You can also sometimes, like I'll put a pole on the ground just to get that feeling of getting more suspension in the canter. But honestly, the best way to improve your horse's canter quality is through transitions. So I hope that that helps you guys out with improving your canter quality. Yes, a million transitions. So once you have, okay, like my horse's canter quality is pretty good. I'm doing the simple changes where I can go left lead canter, walk, right lead canter, walk. The next thing is that you want to select a pattern to teach your horse the flying changes. And every horse kind of does better with a different pattern, depending on if your horse is more on the hotter side, if your horse likes to rush off, or if your horse is more on the lazy side. The exercise there on the left is probably my favorite exercise for introducing the flying changes, and it's a shallow loop serpentine. Whenever you are starting to introduce the flying changes, what you want to do is you want to start out by doing simple changes where you're going to later on ask for the flying change. Because one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to teach the flying changes is that they don't break it down into a way that the horse can understand. So what I see happen a lot is that the horse doesn't understand what they're supposed to do. And then people just end up like hitting the horse, putting more and more pressure on the horse when your horse has no idea what you want. And so the best way to introduce the flying changes is to pick a pattern. So the shallow loop serpentine. And I just start out by doing simple changes. So I come through the corner, I'm on left lead canter, I walk, I pick up the right lead canter, I go out to the middle of the arena, and then to start with, I don't do a flying change here, I do a simple change. I repeat this pattern over and over and over again with simple changes. And once the simple changes are really quick and easy, and my horse kind of starts to know what's coming and anticipate the simple change a little bit, then I try the flying change. I ask for the flying change. If the flying change doesn't work, no big deal. I just walk and pick up the canter lead that I wanted. And I think that's really, really important, which is set your horse up for success. If it doesn't work, it's not a big deal. Just walk and canter and walk and canter, and eventually your horse is going to get it. So inside my course on flying changes, I show you a lot of different patterns that you can use to introduce the flying changes. And it's important to know a variety of different patterns that you can use, and also to change it up, because at first you kind of want your horse anticipating a little bit, like they know, oh my gosh, something's coming, something's coming. But if you only use the same pattern over and over again, the anticipation starts to work against you. So you've got to have some different patterns that you can change to when your horse starts anticipating. So this next slide is about the fact that teaching flying changes is not linear. And I know a lot of you guys said earlier that flying changes are frustrating and scary and they seem impossible. And believe me, I feel your pain. I've taught a lot of different horses how to do the flying changes. And it's one of those things that it gets worse before it gets better. So this little line graph is kind of showing my flying change journey with Kensington. You kind of start out at 0, right? And you get to the point where you're like, okay, my basics are pretty good. I'm going to try a flying change. With Kensington, actually, when I first tried the changes, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be that bad. But then what happened is after the beginner's luck wore off, Kensington started anticipating. He started overthinking. I probably started overthinking the aids as well. And things got really bad. I had to go back to the basics. I had to get my confidence back. I had to give Kensington his confidence back. We had to go back to very simple, like left lead canter, walk, right lead canter, walk, left lead canter, walk. Eventually it got better. Eventually he has the confirmed change, but it's very normal for it to go bad before it gets better. This little graph shows like 6 months. Teaching the changes can take anywhere from 6 months to over a year. It really just depends on your horse, and that's totally normal. It's one of those things that you have to try it. Like, you have to try a change, and then you have to go back to the basics, and you just have to stay committed to that process. Okay. If you're just learning changes like Julie here, what advice do you have for someone at the beginning of this step? My best advice, if you are just learning the changes, is to work on your simple changes. So the better that you can get at going left lead canter, walk, right lead canter, walk, left lead canter, walk, right lead canter, walk, where it just feels simple. Like, you're like, I got this. I can just go canter, walk, canter, walk, canter, walk. Then try a flying change. And if your flying change doesn't work, not a big deal. Just go back to canter, walk, because the canter, walk, canters are going to help you understand the aids for the flying change and the setup for the flying change. So that's my best advice if you're just learning the changes yourself. Okay, now we're moving on to how can you improve or fix your flying changes? Let me know in the chat what happens when you ask for a flying change. Every horse is a little different. Some horses run off. Hannah says all of the above. Paula says takes off, running off, a trot step, crew pie, changes late behind, anticipates, trots behind, no change at all, run up. Okay, so pretty much whatever your horse does, the way that you're going to fix this quote unquote evasion is by going back to your basics. So if you're having a problem with your flying changes, this is a horse here on the left that I'm teaching his flying changes. Kathy here says, flying changes, they honestly turn my brain into porridge and my pony into a steam train, like the blind leading the blind, us two trying to learn them at the same time. The basics are how you are going to teach your flying changes. So the basics are going back to those transitions, thinking about the dressage training scale, rhythm, suppleness, connection, impulsion, straightness, and collection. If you think back to whatever you just wrote in the chat, if your horse runs off or is crew pie, you've lost the collection. If your horse goes crooked, you've lost the straightness. If your horse trots through the flying change, you don't have enough impulsion. If your horse puts their head up or inverts, you've lost the connection. So you can think of flying changes as a test of your basics. You try a flying change, and then guess what? You have to go back to the basics in order to fix that problem in your flying change. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making, is that they try a flying change and it's not perfect. They have a problem, and then they just keep doing the changes over and over and over again, and it gets worse and worse. So when you have a problem with your flying changes, you must go back to those basics that I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. Okay, here's a little trivia question for you guys. How many flying changes are in the Grand Prix test? Think about this. Let me know in the chat. Maybe, okay, Jan says 15. No, more than 15, you guys. We'll give a prize. I think we'll have to send whoever puts the correct number first in the chat, we will send you something. Oh, okay, I see 31 flying changes. There's 31 flying changes in the Grand Prix, which is amazing, because every time you do a flying change, it's like a test of harmony and connection with your horse. In order to do a flying change, you have to be in perfect harmony with your horse. So in the Grand Prix, there's 31 flying changes. There's 15 1-tempies, 9 2-tempies. There's 5 flying changes in your half pass zigzag. There's a flying change between your pirouettes, and there's a flying change at the end of your extended canter. That's a lot of flying changes. This is a photo here of my Grand Prix horse, Harvey. This is Yo Hinneman coaching me. So guess what? With Harvey, a few weeks ago, we were working on the 1-tempies. Harvey was getting a little tense, a little croup high. Guess what Mr. Hinneman had me do? He had me go back to canter, walk, counter, canter, walk, canter, walk, counter, canter, walk. This is my Grand Prix horse. And it just goes to show you that you're never done working on the basics. And whenever you run into an issue, the best thing to do is just go back to those basics. And this is where so many people, they get upset and they start kicking and putting pressure on. And I've been there too. I know that I've made the mistake of, when I can't get a flying change, just drilling it over and over and over again and getting upset about it and getting my horse upset about it. And the truth is that most of the time, if your horse isn't doing a flying change, it's not because they're naughty or bad or intentionally not doing it. It's because they're either not set up correctly, like the canter quality isn't good enough, or they don't understand your aid. So that's why it's really important to go back to the basics always. Okay, flying changes are just the tip of the iceberg. I love this visual. So does anyone know, in an iceberg, how much of the ice is below the water level versus how much of the ice is above the water level? Okay, 90%. You guys are right. So 90% of the ice is below the water, 10% is above the water. Think of your flying changes like this. 90% of your time always is on the basics. So the canter quality, the collection, the activity, the throughness, the suppleness, the straightness. You've got to spend the majority of your time working on the basics. And then the flying change, like the flying change, yeah, it's that magical moment and we all love riding flying changes, but you only get to do that 10% of the time. You've got to think of the flying change as a test of your basics. Try it out. And it's good to try it out. Like, you have to at some point try a flying change. And it's going to really show you the issue that you have in your basics. So if you try a flying change and your horse inverts and throws their head up, okay, you've got to go back and work on keeping your horse round in the canter transition. If you try a flying change and your horse trots through the flying change, you don't have enough impulsion and activity. So you go back to the basics and you work on the basics. And like I've said, I think several times today, this is where so many people get lost and confused. And unfortunately, a lot of people get stuck teaching the flying changes. A lot of horses get stuck learning the flying changes, and they're never able to get the flying change because of this. They spend way too much time working on the flying changes and not nearly enough time working on the basics. Okay, there's a good question here. So do you work on one side only when you're teaching the flying changes? That's a really good question, Debbie. So when I'm first introducing the changes, I always start with the easier flying change first. Your horse is going to have an easier time changing onto the lead that they prefer. So if your horse prefers the left lead canter, you want to work on the flying change to the left first. Then once your horse more or less understands the quote unquote easy change, then you want to start working on the harder change. And this is all stuff that I go into a lot more in my course on flying changes, is really giving you step-by-step how to introduce the changes. So let's talk about a late flying change. When you hear about a flying change that is late, what that means is that the front legs change before the hind legs. So if you think back to the definition that I told you guys about flying changes, the front legs and the hind legs have to change during the same stride. If your horse changes one stride late behind in a test, you're going to get a 4. The reason why a late flying change is such a big deal is because it shows the judge that your horse is not active, that your horse is not collective, that your horse is not in balance, and that you don't have that back to front connection that you need for everything in dressage. How do you fix a late flying change? You go back to the basics, and you have to be super, super picky in that walk canter transition that you really feel the hind leg come through. So if I have a horse that changes late behind, I go back to walk canter, walk canter, walk canter. And I really want to feel that the instant I ask for canter, that I feel that hind leg push through. And that's going to help fix your late flying change. Once again, if your horse changes late behind, do not change over and over again and let your horse change late behind, because what happens is that your horse can get very good at changing late behind, where they're really efficient and smooth, and it can be a really, really hard thing to fix. So how did I learn to ride and teach flying changes? Like I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, I've ridden a ton of different horses. I've trained a lot of different horses how to do the flying changes. Everything from Sparky, I had a little Arabian who was so cool. This is Max here, actually. His owner's riding him there. But Max is a little Arabian that I got into training. I got him all the way up to the I2 level. I've also worked with a lot of different instructors and trainers like Yo Hinneman, Morton Thompson. I've learned from Charlotte Dujardin, Edward Gall. So I've learned from top trainers, and I've also learned from all of the horses that I've ridden throughout my career. Every horse is a little bit different. And so while you follow this format and you go back to the basics and you have your list of prerequisites, it's a little bit different journey with every horse. Some horses pick up the changes rather easily. It's easier for some horses than others. Other horses, it takes a long, long time. In general, I found that horses that are a little stiffer, like that don't move as easily side to side, those horses in general are easier to teach the flying changes. The horses that really can go sideways a lot, in general, are more difficult to teach the flying changes. But I really believe that the more that you stick to a system and you work on your basics and you test the flying change, like our little iceberg analogy, and then you go back to the basics and you've learned some patterns. Every trainer I've worked with has a different pattern that they like to use to introduce the flying changes. So you need to have some different patterns that you can try out and see what works for your horse. But it is possible. You can teach your horse how to do the flying changes, regardless of your horse's breed or age, and also regardless of your discipline.
I think that works perfectly, Amelia, with the question that we have in the comment from James. He was asking if you've ever done this with a Western horse. Look at that.
Yes, I have done this with a Western horse. So I actually, when I was in Colorado, I did a lot of reined cow horse. And as you guys know, in reining, you have to do flying changes. If you're a jumper, you have to do flying changes. And so it applies to all disciplines. Horses are horses. Like Kira Kirkland said, flying changes are a horse's natural way of rebalancing themselves. And even though, like for jumpers and reiners, they're not as picky about the flying change being clean. Like dressage people, we're so picky. Everything has to be like perfect. It has to be clean, straight, uphill, in balance. In the other disciplines, they're not as picky, but you still should be able to do a clean, straight change. Because if you're a jumper and your horse only changes in front and then you're going out of balance in cross canter to the jump, that's going to be a problem. Same thing for the reiners. Like when you're doing your circles as a reiner, if your horse doesn't do the change clean, it's going to affect your horse's balance and impulsion. So flying changes are a really useful thing to be able to do regardless of your discipline. And like I said too, flying changes are so fun. It's such a moment of when you can get your horse underneath of you. How much does your horse weigh? 1,100, 1,400 pounds. When you feel that power come up and they swap leads from one to the other in midair. It's an incredible feeling. It's just such a feeling of connection and harmony, and it's amazing. It's really amazing. So I know you guys have probably a lot more questions about the flying changes. We've covered a lot in this webinar, and if we didn't get to your question, email us support@amelianewcomb-dressage.com. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the course that I just am putting out today, which is Flying Changes Made Simple. I've been working on this course kind of secretly for many, many months because, like I said, I think flying changes are where so many people get really stuck and really frustrated, and they don't know what to do. And it's such a shame to see horses and riders get stuck because of the flying changes, and it's really not necessary. So inside of this course, I'm going to give you guys a really clear roadmap about the exact steps that you need to take to be able to teach your horse the flying changes. So I'll have my team put the link there in the chat. Oh, Cheryl said she already signed up. So the link is amelianewcomb-dressage.com/flying changes course. You can head over there now if you're interested in learning more about the course and signing up. When you enroll today, here's a list of everything that you are going to get. So I'm going to go into flying change theory inside the course. I'm going to give you all the prerequisites that you need to be able to start working on your flying changes. I talked about those today, but I'm going to really show you with a variety of different horses how specific and detailed you need to be with all of those prerequisites, and then help you decide when you're ready to teach the flying changes and the patterns that you should use to help set your horse up for flying changes. Like I said, these patterns are exercises that I've learned from a lot of different top trainers in the world: Charlotte Dujardin, Edward Gall, Yo Hinneman, and there are certain patterns that work for horses to learn the flying changes. The course also includes troubleshooting. So I show videos of working with horses that anticipate, horses that are late behind, working with students, teaching them how to do the flying changes. So it's not just like, here's my perfect horse that does perfect changes. I show you kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of teaching the flying changes. I also, inside the course, we show you how to count tempi changes, how to ride your tempi changes, how to do the canter, zigzag, and more. In addition, when you sign up today during this webinar, you will get a workshop on throughness and top line development, which is obviously the more through and the more your horse is using their top line, the better they're going to be able to do flying changes. And there's also a workshop on half halts. So all of this is valued at over $1,600. It's funny though, I was thinking about this and I was thinking, how much money do you think I've spent in lessons over the years to learn how to teach the flying changes? I think it's been, I don't know, I think close to $100,000 I've spent on lessons, which is worth it. Every penny of it is totally worth it. And flying changes is something that you need help with. You need guidance, you need exercises, you need patterns to have success and to not get stuck and to not give up, because it's really hard to teach the flying changes. So when you sign up today, you'll get all of this for $299. There's also a payment plan, 3 payments of $115. And this sale ends on Saturday. So you have until Saturday to decide whether or not you want to sign up for the course. But if you sign up today, you will get the throughness and top line workshop as well. Here's a look inside the course, and you get lifetime access to the course. So once you sign up, the course is yours forever, which is really important because, like I said, you don't know quite how long it's going to take you to teach your horse how to do the flying changes. And as you can see, there's a lot of content inside the course because I really wanted to show you behind the scenes of what it takes to teach a horse the flying changes. So yeah, I show some Grand Prix horses that are very confirmed in the flying changes, but I also really show you the nitty-gritty of teaching a horse that's never done the changes before, teaching a horse that has trouble with late flying changes. What do you do with a horse that anticipates? I love this lecture here, Plan B, when the unicorn won't fly. And I show you guys like, hey, we were going to film for flying changes and it was a tough day. So guess what? We went back and we worked on the basics. So like I was saying, inside the course, I really show you the reality of flying changes. So the horse there in the middle, that's Natasha. She has wings. Natasha is a Grand Prix horse that I ride, and her flying changes she's amazing. I mean, she's very talented. She's very confirmed in her flying changes. In our freestyle, we actually do 2 tempies on a circle into 1 tempies. But that's not normal. Like, it's taken a lot of training and time to get Natasha to be able to do that. So I'm also showing you this here, this horse with the hind legs up in the air and the front legs crossed. That's Leo. That's a horse that inside the course, I show you actually the first time I ever try a flying change on him. And then I show you the process of, you know, what patterns I use, how to change it up, and then what I do on a day that I like to work on the flying changes, but guess what? I need to just spend time and go back to the basics. I also show some videos of working with students, teaching students how to do the flying changes, because that I've done as well. Working with students, teaching them how to do changes for the first time. Or what's even harder is when you're teaching a student and a horse how to do flying changes for the first time. So there's a big variety of content inside of the course. And like I said, it's not just the perfect flying change, because that's not helpful. And it's important to remember that it's not going to be perfect at first. When you first start working on the changes, you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have problems come up, and that's all part of it. It's anytime you learn something new, you're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna fall down and you're gonna have to try new things. But what's important is to understand what to do when things aren't going well, and to have that support and that education so that you don't give up and you don't get frustrated. And also for your horse, that, you know, your horse doesn't get confused or scared or frustrated when you are trying to teach the flying changes. So flying
Amelia,
change hell.
Amelia, real quick,
ahead.
we have a few quick questions about the course. One that's coming up is, what if you're not ready for flying changes? Is this course good prep / how do you know what are the signs that you're ready to start working on flying changes?
Yeah, so if you're not quite ready to start working on the flying changes, the course is still very applicable to you. If your dream is that you want to be able to do the flying changes with your horse, if that's a goal of yours, what the course is going to do is it's going to motivate you to get there. So let's say you sign up for the course and you just really, really work on the basics. You are going to be so much more determined to get your basics down so that you're ready to work on the flying changes. And I do this all the time. So I have my horse, I'm like, I want to show 3rd level. I need to teach my horse the flying changes. So what do? I work on the basics. I work on the canter quality. And then I try a flying change. And guess what? It doesn't work the first time. So what do? I go back and I work on the basics. And so a lot of the course is that iceberg analogy. 90% of the course, we're still working on the basics. And then you try the flying change and then you go back to the basics. So absolutely, if you're not quite ready, sign up for the course and really, really focus on those basics. You know, watch some of the exercises with the flying changes, but use flying changes as motivation to improve your basics. Because when you have a goal, like at the beginning, I told you about Kensington, I wanted to do the 6-year-old test with him. That was my goal. And I needed to be able to do flying changes to get to that goal. So having that goal and that dream gives you a destination. And then you're going to go and you're going to work on your canter and you're going to work on those basics so that you can do your flying changes. So like I just said, this course is for you if you need help with your basics. Absolutely. You want to improve your canter quality. And again, the better your canter quality, not only is it going to be nicer to ride, but that's also going to get you ready to work on your flying changes. So like I said, flying changes is the dream. It's that moment of connection and harmony with your horse, but you've really got to focus on the basics in order to get there. This course also will help you if you have a schoolmaster, lucky you, if you have a horse that knows the flying changes, but you don't. This course will help you if you can't get a clean change. So if you have a horse that trots through the change or changes late behind or wants to buck through the change, if your horse won't change at all, if your horse bolts or buck, if your horse anticipates, all of the above. So it pretty much covers all of the bases. And does online training really work? This is a good question. And to be honest, when I first started making my YouTube videos, I thought, I don't know if these are actually going to help people, but it's really amazing. Let me know in the chat if you have learned from my online programs. You guys, my students, are so amazing. And I'm so proud of all you guys. And it's really makes me so happy to be able to help you guys with your riding through my videos, through my programs. This photo here is a photo of me with Kensington in Chicago last year. And all of these people showed up. I'd never met them before. And the stories that they had about how I had helped them in some way through my online programs was amazing. It gives me chills. So yes, the online courses work. There is a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you sign up for the course and you go through the content and you just feel like it's not for you or you're not quite ready yet, no big deal. Send me an email. I'll give you your money back. But it's basically no risk because the programs do work and they will help expedite the process of getting your horse to understand the flying changes. This program is also certified by the United States Dressage Federation. So if you take the program, you can get credits from USCF, which is very nice that they have endorsed our curriculum. And here's a few testimonials from our students. I love this one from JC. She says, I just graduated from Amelia's masterclass, and I think from my incredible experience that at whatever level 1 rides, you will totally benefit from any classes Amelia and team are offering. She says, I highly recommend taking any of the courses she has available now. Trust me, it's worth its weight in equestrian gold. And I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing about your progress. So as much as you can, post on my Facebook page, tag me on Instagram. It really makes me happy and it keeps me motivated to hear about your guys' progress. And like I said, I've ridden so much. I've spent like 50,000 hours in the saddle. I've struggled a lot. Dressage and riding and training horses is really hard. And one of my big goals and missions is to help you guys and to help you with your horses and to make your journey just a little bit easier and a little bit less stressful for you and for your horse. So Kensington and Sparky, these are two horses that I think a lot of people would have given up on, that they never would have been able to teach how to do the flying changes, or that they never would have been able to communicate or explain what they wanted for different reasons. Kensington, because his canter was so big and disorganized. Sparky, because he was a little sparky and a little bit ornery. But it just goes to show you, believe in your horse, believe in what is possible. And when you have a structure and a system and the education that you need, you can do it. You can teach your horse how to do the flying changes. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be linear. Some days are going to be better than others, but absolutely you can do it. And I believe in you. I believe in your horse. So just like Sparky and Kensington. So if you sign up for the course, when you get to the checkout page or the thank you page after you sign up, there will be an option to join Strides with Amelia. So think about the Flying Changes course as like the textbook. Inside the course, you'll be able to type in questions to me and I will answer your questions within 24 hours. If you really need extra support, if you're like, Amelia, I need to be sending you videos, I need a Facebook community, I need office hours, then you're going to want to sign up for Strides. Strides is an optional add-on to the program, but this is just going to give you extra support, extra encouragement, as well as video review, which can be really helpful, especially if you have a specific problem that you're having with your horse and you need me to watch your video and tell you exactly what to do. So to leave you guys with a nice little quote, to ride a horse is to fly without wings. And I really think that horses are so magical. I was riding this morning, Harvey, and just thinking, how amazing is it that for one, they let us ride them. And for two, they let us control them, and that we can teach them how to do flying changes, that we can have such instantaneous connection and communication with our horses all through feel, right? You're not using verbal communication. You're using the pressure of your legs and your reins and your seat to instantaneously communicate with your horse. And it's such a magical feeling when you have those moments of connection. So I hope that you guys join me inside the course. It's really such a special course, and I've worked really hard to put it together. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys inside of the course. Let me stop this and see if we have any other questions from.
Yes, we've had lots of questions in the chat, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them,
Okay.
but we'll do our best. The biggest ones I've kind of been asking are, you kind of addressed, in the course, do you go over changes with a green horse, like that doesn't know the changes, but you said yes. Do you go over more advanced stuff in the course, like the one-time tempies, or is it just about teaching the changes?
Yeah, definitely. So I do go into tempi changes, helping you guys understand how to count the tempi changes, as well as what to do when you're having a problem with your tempi changes, which I hope you can guess what my solution is to if you're having a problem with your tempi changes. I also cover the canter half pass zigzags, which start showing up at the Pre-St. George. So there is that upper level segment as well as all the basics. So it goes from everything of teaching a horse for the first time how to do the flying changes, as well as showing videos on a confirmed Grand Prix horse with one tempis and half pass zigzags and all of that.
Awesome. And then there's been some confusion about the bonuses and things like that. Can you talk about the through-ness bonus, the half-halt bonus, and then the cash bonus? When are those timings for everybody to think about?
Okay, so when you sign up today, you'll get the through-ness and top line bonus as well as the half-halt bonus. But you have to sign up during the webinar if you want to get the through-ness and top line bonus. Those are just two bonuses that give you lectures and exercises, again, to just help you with your basics. Your horse has to be through and listening to your half halts in order to be able to do a flying change. And then you have until Saturday to get the $100 off of the course price. This is like the lowest price the course will ever be since it's a new program. After Saturday, the price will go up to $399. So it's a really great time to get in on this deal. And like I said, I've spent a lot of money learning how to teach the flying changes, and I've kind of compiled all of the exercises, everything that I know into this program for you guys.
Awesome. And then we had some questions about, there are new people to the community, which is exciting, and they're not sure if flying changes is the right place to start. Are there other courses that they can look at, and how can they find them? And which would you recommend the best place to start for someone coming on? What is your favorite course to start people off with?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one. We have so many different programs inside of our thing right now. So we do have coming up in April, we're doing a rider position challenge. But honestly, even though flying changes is a little bit more advanced, probably the best thing to do is sign up for flying changes, sign up for strides. Inside of strides, you will get access to the rider position challenge, which is coming up in April. And so either one of those, either signing up for flying changes now or waiting till April and signing up for the rider position challenge is a great place to start. Just whatever motivates you. I think whatever excites you the most, that's the great place to start.
Awesome. And then we've got quite a few people saying, I came late. Will you be doing this webinar again? Can you let them know how they can find the webinar again?
We will be sending out a replay. So yes, you can start over at the beginning, and you should watch the beginning because there's a lot of really good stuff in this. I gave you guys a lot of golden nuggets, which have taken me a long time to learn. So I hope you guys, really, and one thing that I do want to say is I have definitely some trauma with learning the flying changes and being in situations with horses or in lessons where the trainer's just like, again, do it again. And it puts so much stress on you and on your horse, and it's not necessary. Like, it does not need to be that way. And then what happened is I worked with a coach named Morton Thompson, and he's an amazing trainer. And he's a little bit more into like horse psychology and how horses think. And he was just always like, go back to the basics, like walk, canter, walk, canter, walk, canter. Your horse will eventually connect the dots. That flying change is just a canter transition, and it doesn't need to be this big, stressful, like thing. You just have to go back and explain your horse the aids, teach your horse what you want. It's not about adding pressure or stress. And I think that's really, really important.
Awesome. So we've got some questions about flying changes. I know we've only got about 10 minutes left before you have to go. So is it okay if we move now on to some questions?
Yeah, let me just show people quickly so this is the sale page. So if you head over to the link, which is in the chat, then you'll see the sale page here. You can scroll around and see kind of everything that's included. When you click on the Enroll Now button, it will take you to the options. You can either pay in full or you can do the payment plan, whatever works best for you. And you do have until Saturday to get the $100 off. And then once you sign up, if you want to join Strides, so if you want to join Strides after you sign up for the course, here on the thank you page, you can click that button to join Strides. Again, it's optional. Strides is just if you feel like you want a little extra support. Once you get inside the course, so this is what the course looks like. You can see there's a lot of content in here. So there's a lot of videos. Some of the videos, I like to keep videos short inside my courses, but for this one, there's some videos that are longer because I wanted to show you guys the reality sometimes of what it takes to really get the basics correct before you're ready to start working on the flying changes. So there are some longer videos in there, but I really break things down into step-by-step. Here's what you should do to teach your horse how to do the flying changes. Then inside the course, so if you click on one of these lectures, you'll see there's videos that show you guys exactly step by step, show you the exercises. And then below each video, there will be a comment box. So you can type in any questions that you have here, and I will answer your questions. I check them every day. So I would say within about 24 hours, you will get an answer to your questions. So let's have, Nicole's going to give me some more questions about flying changes that I should answer. Let me see. I see a lot of you guys. Let's see. Mary just signed up for the course. Sarah signed up. Nikki signed up. Good. We have a lot of people that have signed up, which I'm super excited about. Okay,
Yeah.
Nicole.
Yes, and before we move into the questions, we forgot to mention at the beginning, but if you guys have been getting our emails, you know that we are giving away an enrollment to the class. And so I know, we've just got so excited. This has been our most well-received webinar, so we got a little bit nervous getting on. But I have the winner of the webinar, of the enrollment, and if you've already enrolled, we will refund you. But Teresa Hibbenchin, and I apologize, I pronounced your name wrong. Feel free to email us at support@AmeliaNewcomb-Dressage, and we will get you enrolled. So congratulations on that. And then a couple questions that have come up. One about teaching flying changes with a pole. Do you ever recommend using a pole to teach the flying changes? That's quite a common way in the 100 jumper world. What are your thoughts on that?
So I like to use a pole to create more activity and to get more suspension in the canter. So cantering over poles helps to get that moment of suspension to get more jump when you're just cantering. For me personally, I don't like to do the changes over the pole because sometimes it can cause your horse to change late behind. So that said, I mean, some horses, if that's the only way that you can get the idea to do a change, then yeah, you can use the pole. But in general, I like to use poles to get more activity. And then I like to use my simple changes and specific patterns to actually introduce the changes. So that's just me.
Awesome. And then what do you do if one change, one direction is good, but the other change, the other direction isn't good?
So that's a good question. And of course, my answer is go back to the basics. But in general, like, let's say that your change from right to left is good and your change from left to right is bad. Probably your transition from walk to rightly canter or from trot to rightly canter has some problems. So it could be that your horse falls to the right when you ask for rightly canter. It could be that your horse isn't active enough. And this is like a really big thing, which is in order to do the flying changes, when you ask for the flying change, your horse has to immediately give you a reaction with their hind legs. So when you're doing your trot canter or your walk canter, you have to really feel that reaction coming from the hind leg. So that's what I would go back to, is on that difficult side. Like, let's say that the change to the right is the difficult change. You're going to be doing like walk, rightly canter, walk, rightly canter, walk, rightly canter, and really make that so simple and so confirmed. And that is going to fix your flying change to the right. It's not going to be like just doing the change over and over again. Go back to that canter transition and really analyze what's happening. You have to be so picky. Like if your horse in the walk canter, if your horse comes above the bit a little bit, it's going to be 10 times worse in the flying change. If your horse falls to the right in the walk canter a little bit, it's going to be 1,000 times worse in the flying change. So you have to be very, very picky about the canter transition in order to fix the flying change.
Awesome, thank you. And is there value to learning the changes on a schoolmaster first? What happens if you don't have access to a schoolmaster? Thoughts and opinions.
So yes, I mean, if you have a schoolmaster and you can learn the changes on them, absolutely, that is amazing. And you should love up on your schoolmaster because they are very, very special, wonderful horses. If you don't have access to a schoolmaster, you can still learn the flying changes. And honestly, I never had a schoolmaster. I always got like the difficult horses that no one else wanted to ride. And so I really had to work on the basics and, follow the exercises. And eventually I was able to teach the flying changes. The canter aid itself is like a very unique and kind of specific aid. What I mean by that is that every horse's aid for the canter, as well as for the flying changes, is a little bit different. When I go and like try horses in Europe, even trained horses, I usually don't work on like tempi changes or a lot of flying changes because it's just something that's very specific. So it's okay if you don't know how to do the flying changes and your horse doesn't either, because it allows you to really work on that communication and to teach your horse your aids for the flying change. So it is harder if you haven't done it before. It's like the blind leading the blind, but it also is possible because it's a very personal communication. If you think back to that photo of it, the aid goes from your brain to your leg to your horse's brain to your horse's legs. So the more that you have a bond and a partnership with your horse, that's the most important thing.
Awesome sauce. And then how often do you practice the changes when you're teaching them? Do you do it once a week? Do you do a little bit each day? Thoughts and opinions.
That's a good question. So in general, if I have a horse that is learning the changes, like from the beginning, the horse doesn't know the changes before, it depends a little bit on the horse. So like I said, I really say, okay, like I'm at a place, I feel like my basics are good. At some point you have to try the changes so that you know the changes tell you the homework you need to go back and do. So I try a change and then that tells me where my holes are. So then I can go back to my basics and work on it. I would say that if I'm teaching a horse the flying changes, I would say I work on it maybe 3 or 4 times a week, but I also am very flexible in the sense that if the horse comes out and they're a little tense, or it's Monday and they've had the weekend off and I just can't get my basics good enough, then maybe I don't work on the changes that day and I just focus on the basics. Because remember that the better you can get your basics, the better your changes are going to be. That said, I have had some horses that they get to like the flying changes, they get a little bit where they overthink it and the flying changes are too big of a deal. And sometimes in that case, I say, okay, I'm just going to try a flying change every day until the horse realizes that it's part of the routine and it's not such a big deal. But that usually comes a little bit later on once you've tried a few changes, like I would say 4 or 5 months into teaching the flying changes.
Awesome. And we've got a few people in the chat and I just want to like calm everybody because some people are saying they don't have the bonus in their account. How does that work? Why is it not showing up in the course? So we use a program called Teachable, which hosts all of Amelia's programs. So what happens is when you sign up for the Flying Changes Made Simple Masterclass, you will get an email which will be linked to your 2 bonus workshops, and you have to go in and sign up with the free coupon to get those added to your Teachable account. So it's not actually inside the Flying Changes course itself, it is separate, but so it will be coming to you in an email. If you haven't already gotten the email and you've signed up, just be patient. It should automated, but sometimes the delay in the server is a few minutes. If you haven't received it by tonight, please email us at support@AmeliaNewcombDressage. It might be that your email is just sending it to spam, or it might be going to a different email, but we're happy to send it out to you. And I think we're at the end of your time, Amelia, so we'll let you go. But for everyone else, we will be answering questions in the chat for the next 5 or 6 minutes regarding the course. We will try and point you to resources as much as we can if you have other questions. You can also find Amelia on YouTube, sign up for her email address and things like that for her weekly tips. And we're so glad to have you part of the community. Do you have any other words to sign off, Amelia?
No, just thank you guys all so much for being here. And I love having our amazing community and I love sharing my knowledge with you guys. I also love seeing you guys and seeing all of your progress and helping you guys with your horses because horses are amazing. So I would love to see you in the course on flying changes. Let's see, Carol signed up, Lori signed up, Megan signed up, Jeannie signed up. Awesome. I'm really excited for this program and for this course, and I'm so dedicated to helping you guys. So once you're inside the course, whatever questions you have, whatever videos you want me to add, I am all for that. And yeah, so I'm going to close off my camera. If you guys have more questions, please type them in the chat. My team will be on here for the next 10 minutes or so answering questions. You can also email us at amelianewcomb-dressage.com. If you have any problems with your bonuses, we will get it sorted out, and we're here to help you guys. So whatever we can do to help you out, answer any questions that you have, we're here for that. So thank you guys all so much for being here. Bye, everyone. Flying changes are one of the most complicated and difficult movements to ride and teach. I've taught hundreds of horses and riders how to do the changes. Unfortunately, teaching the changes is a place where a lot of horses and riders get really stuck, frustrated, and sometimes, quite frankly, a little bit scared. In my brand new course, Flying Changes Made Simple, I'm going to show you the exact system that I use to teach all of my horses and all of my students how to do the flying changes. I know that this system works, and one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they're teaching the flying changes is they just keep trying to do flying change after flying change, and they don't go back to the basics. You have to go back to the basics and fix your canter quality, your straightness, get your horse more on the aids, then go back and do a flying change again. And that is the biggest secret and the biggest thing that I'm going to teach you in my brand new course. I'm really looking forward to working with you. Simply click the link below and get instant access to the course. Flying changes made simple, clean, correct, and on the aids in just 6 months.